Hi all, I have a new course, The Complete Guide to Positional Chess. I hope you can check it out and go via the page Kingscrusher TV, that link https Kingscrusher TV. You'll get all the discount codes if you go through that page. So for at least the next few hours, there's a great big discounts, and then it's the normal discounts which are also significant, and then towards the end of the month there's that's usually about 5 days before the end of the month. If you check that page again, then the discount might even increase. So anyway, this course was a real clarifier for me for positional chess. So I've always kind of wondered, what does it really mean to be playing positionally? So I quite like my attacks and my tactics, but sometimes, attacks and tactics, they might backfire. So sometimes it's good to strengthen the position. This was an advice actually given by Nimzovich in one of his quotations. Often strengthening moves are going to be better than playing more directly for an attack or a combination or a tactic. So these slight improvements to the position, it aligns to the accumulation of advantages model set out by Steinitz, Wilhelm Steinitz, the first official world champion, who took a more scientific view of chess. And in particular, so here are some key points. So being able to play positioning when there are no tactics, so positional play becomes the main factor. Be able to improve the placement of pieces and harmonise with pawn structure. Be able to steer the pawn structure in a favourable way. Be able to fix weaknesses in the opponent's position with the option of eliminating them later. Be able to coordinate pieces to common goals. And so on. You can read here and check out, this course page. If you check this out, it's also got some free sample videos. So you'll see that you can preview a few videos like these preview links. I would suggest using the expand all sections, and then you'll get to see these free preview videos. So there's some later on as well, like handling the King's Gambit, the Bishop's Gambit variation example. And yeah, so there's quite a lot in the course. It's approaching, it's about 40 hours at the moment. So I had a blast doing it. So there's quite a bit of, free sample videos. So anyway, let me highlight the major structure. If we collapse all the sections, I have actually gone to town with the idea of patterns, because I think patterns are less prescriptive. They're less saying, this is golden truth, because that can be misleading when you get carried away with principles and rules, which are not really rules. You could be, you might not be playing the position that you have on the board as much as you should. So with patterns, it's more, is the pattern applicable to your position? And I've kind of abstracted what patterns are really important. Control comes up so much. If you can't control the position, how can you actually accumulate advantages? And sometimes, you might not be able to accumulate any advantages. You need to wait a bit more for the opponent to have more weaknesses, self-destruct. So control is a really key thing, regardless of accumulating advantages. If you keep control without creating weaknesses in your own camp, hopefully the opponent might self-destruct in any case. So a lot of control patterns I have mentioned here. So making use of prevention, which Nimzovich likes to call prophylaxis, which might mean something else nowadays. Counterplay crushing, but making use of calmness, defending carefully. Counterplay crushing to neutralize gambits, making use of strengthening moves to neutralize combinations, binds to suppress counterplay, simplification to keep things simple, but creating in the extreme positional zugzwangs, making use of blockade. Blockade is an extreme form of counterplay crushing if you think about it. When you blockade pawns, they really are kept under lock and key. It's not just active surveillance, as Nimzovich might express. So making use of material gains, but not just for material, but for positional concerns. So there's imbalance patterns, structure patterns. So a lot based about pawn structure, what key methods to look out for. So we have things like, square complex domination. So that's a set of squares of a certain colour. Pawn structure undermining, Pawn's irreversibility being celebrated. Pawns don't go backwards. Making use of pawn breaks, which can sometimes liberate pieces, if well prepared especially. Increasing the pressure on structural issues like the backward pawn. Making use of weakness provocation. So as you can see, there's quite a few structural patterns, as you might suspect, because the structural patterns, that they are pawn structure. It is the slowest moving aspects of a chess position. It makes chess much more of a logical game rather than a game you just have to just calculate all the time, because there's a clash of pieces and it's all about calculation. So the pawn structure really makes chess more positional in general. So structure patterns are like a major pattern in my view. Waiting patterns are a major pattern as well. Not so major, but up there. Endgame patterns, so like the king can be much more aggressive, for example, in endgames, and the rooks, hopefully behind pass pawns, either your own pass pawns or the opponent's. Overwhelming patterns like playing on both sides of the board. Patterns to do with the centre, so Nimzovich's view on the centre about control versus occupation, so that's interesting. The idea of overprotecting strong points, like especially e5 if you're playing with the white pieces. So overprotection naturally centralizes, but it also sometimes prevents pawn breaks from the opponent. Space patterns, piece quality patterns, harmony patterns. So there's quite a few examples on harmony patterns. If we expand this out. Okay, so you get the gist, I hope. Rook patterns, bishop patterns. Specific weapons that I like to make use of. So you might think, well, pin's tactical. It's also strategic in a way, because a pin can last the whole game, basically. It's a form of restraint. Outposts, pass pawns, form pawns, activity patterns, and time patterns, accuracy patterns, and crowning patterns. So seeing the positional players, how they crown their positional play later, sometimes spectacularly, just as spectacularly as the classic attacking combinatory players. So yes, this is there's PGN downloads, and okay, so yeah, I went to town on this course because I thought it was quite fundamentally important. So I've done a set of very, very important courses on Udemy, which don't just relate to a specific opening, but kind of go deeper, which can apply to all sorts of openings and middle games and end games. So this is one of the fundamental courses, which I would really recommend checking out to potentially improve play fundamentally, the way you think about certain classes of moves. So you don't always have to do something. This act of always having to do something. Sometimes you can just strengthen your position. Sometimes you can just wait. So these different types of moves which you might be underestimating, and quite often just making a small improvement to pieces might make the tactics so much more effective and winning, or the combinations or the attack. So positional chess is the art of fine little improvements and fine little accumulations of advantage. And this is, in my view, slightly different from the classic view of strategy and planning. I'm quite cynical about this long-term planning, because I think modern chess is more about positional chess than deep long-term strategy, because people are so resourceful nowadays, and quite often if you looked at the old master games of the grand plans, often it was things like weakness of the last move, which could have won games at several points. So being pedantic, chess is a very concrete game. There are often these like micro opportunities, which makes, in my view, the notion of grand planning several moves ahead is kind of unrealistic in a lot of cases. You can visualize where you want generally your pieces to be, in my view, but I like the idea of positional chess, small improvements, small, steady, sort of guaranteed improvements that you can make. And when you see the engine graphs after of positional players, that often it's like climbing a mountain, gradually up and up and up, with little controversy. And it's also very economical and practical. Players like Capablanca, Karpov, Adams, they're not necessarily finding the ultimate move in positions, but that means less time trouble later and less scope for blunders. So positional chess it might not be optimized for the engine best move, but it's just a way of making these small improvements to your position quite often, and the accumulation of all of that can be overwhelming for opponents. they can feel as though, you know, they're being strangled on the chessboard, basically. So, so positional chess is a very, very important part of chess, to be able to play positionally, and yeah, it's a real clarifier for me in constructing this course, in working through lots of classic games. So yeah, I hope you check out this structure and the sample videos, and yeah, make sure you use the Kingscrusher TV page, because that carries through the discounts. Okay, so I hope this is useful, and maybe you can consider enrolling on this particular course. Okay, comments, questions, likes, shares, all appreciated. Thanks very much.